So as you saw that this annotation is no good for us just yet. So what we need to do is we're going to use this annotation called at and then data JPA and then test. And this should come from Spring Framework, and you can see that we also have one for JDBC test, which we could actually use instead of configuring the data source as we've done before, but I'll show you this annotation later as well. So let's use this one for now, and if I try and run the test again, this will fail. And this fails because, so in here, if I show you, so the logs, so basically it's failing because it cannot connect to the database. So let me see if I can get the error. Scroll down and there we go. So fail to replace data source with an embedded database for tests. Now we basically have our own database that we want to connect to, which is the test container. Therefore, we have to disable this embedded database. The way to do it is with this annotation. So here we're going to say at and then auto and then configure test database, and inside just say replace and say replace and then here with none. So we want no embedded database. If I try and run this again, so let's go step by step, and you can see that this time it works. Now this time it works because it's actually connecting to our database that we set up. So within our Docker Compose, it's connecting to this database in here. So this guy, but this is no good, right? Because we want to use our test container. So if I show you, so this is passing now, but if I open up the terminal and here, if I say ls or dir, so if you're on Windows, you should see that we have this Docker Compose YAML. So here, let's just basically stop. So Docker Compose stop. So in here, let's just try and run this test again. This time it will fail because it can't connect to it. So it fails, that's really good. Now, before I start my database, let's basically switch this to use our test container. So say extends and then abstract and then test and then containers. And if I run this, you can see that this time it should just work. Awesome. Now this works, and more important, so we are connecting to our database, which is running with test containers. If I click on exists customer by ID, check this out. The bean definition count now it's 88 instead of, I think it was 200 and something, right? So this annotation right here, so this annotation called at DataJpaTest, it's just loading anything that our JPA components need in order to run. It's just bringing the essentials. And you saw that with the way we've done this test in here. So customer JDBC data access service, we actually cut down that entirely by just having, I think it was just maybe 3 beans that we loaded, because the JDBC template we did initialize ourselves, the customer role mapper as well ourselves. So this is the perfect scenario. But we could also in here say at and then data and then JDBC test, but we don't need to do this because at this point we can. Now for customer repository, so JPA based components, it's a little bit more tricky for us to configure things manually. So instead we use at DataJpaTest. We disable the embedded database that they use for testing, and we are good to go. Awesome. So if you have any questions on what we've done, please